Hi guys, so let's get the apology out of the way quickly. I may appear very shiny, sweaty, all of those kind of gross things right now. It is almost 30 degrees and I have been out and about all day, so this is the state you get me in because I wanted to film whilst I had the chance, and I wanted to film a recommendations video of a selection of books that are underhyped. The Underhyped readathon is about to take place. I believe it starts around the 3rd of September, the beginning of September anyway. I'll have the proper dates in the description box down below. This is a readathon run by Charlotte and it is one of my favourite readathons on BookTube. There are very little requirements to take part. The general idea is just to try and read for a week as many books that are underhyped as possible. You can define underhyped however you choose. I think one of the main ways people define underhyped is by how many ratings the books they read have on Goodreads. So for example, all the books I'm going to recommend in this video have less than 1,000 people rating them on Goodreads. Unfortunately, I just don't really have the time to take part in the readathon this month, but I wanted to take part in spirit by maybe giving you some suggestions of books to put on your TBR. I will of course link Charlotte's channel down below and all of the information. You have to check her out. She started this whole thing and it's pretty awesome, so thank you Charlotte. And without further ado, let's get into the books. First book I have to recommend to you is actually a play, and it's The Seer by Ali Smith. I was thoroughly impressed. I would have loved to have seen it performed, but it was actually still a really magnificent play to read, and I do generally find that I don't enjoy reading plays as much as I enjoy reading regular prose because it is obviously intended for the stage, but this play stood up to being read. I'm sure you're all familiar with who Ali Smith is. This is one of 2 plays I believe she has written, and this one is about a couple who are sitting at home doing their mundane everyday tasks like usual. They are very much in a routine when our female character's sister comes to visit. She comes a knocking at the door and they invite her in and they're like, oh welcome, it's nice to see you, changes up their routine a little bit. The thing is, it's not actually her sister. Her main character knows this, but is so sick of their dull everyday life that she decides to go along with it anyway. And it continues to invite her in and things start to spiral from there. It is a play that constantly breaks the 4th wall. I feel like there's maybe even like a 5th and a 6th wall going on there. There's an interesting commentary going on about stereotypes and prejudices, and it's also just kind of wacky and fascinating, so I would highly recommend it. But the next book is a graphic novel cum comic strip book, and it is The Trouble with Women by Jackie Fleming. This is a little book where each page has a little illustration and a little tagline or maybe a quote from a piece of literature to go along with that illustration, and they're all comments on historical perceptions of women, especially in the Victorian era, I think was the focus. I don't have a copy here that I can show you. It essentially illustrates completely vacuous assertions that were made about women at that time, and it's really funny. Some of them are real, some of them are interpretations of what was going on but not actual quotes, and other ones are just, look, this would have been equally as ridiculous as the things that people were saying. It's really funny and it's the best kind of humour because it's also observational and clever, so would recommend checking that one out, and it's a super quick one to read for a readathon if you're looking for something that meets that bill. Whilst we're on the topic of short and easy books for readathons, I wanted to recommend a chap book to you. Now, to be honest, given the date this is probably going to go up, you probably won't be able to get your hands on this in time for the readathon starting because you can only order it from the independent publisher's website, which is Madras Press, but regardless I would still recommend it. And it is Tales Told in Oz by Gregory Maguire, who is the author of the book Wicked, that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. This is a lovely little chapbook basically recounting the kind of folklore of Oz in the world of Oz that Gregory Maguire functions within. So these are the stories that people in Oz would tell their children, that's the idea, and I really enjoyed this. I've never read Wicked, and I still haven't read Wicked or any of Gregory Maguire's books, but this was a really nice introduction to his writing. It's 0.5 in the Oz series because they are kind of tales preceding everything else, so you don't need to have read any of his other books to read it, and it might be a nice beginner for you if you've been meaning to read something like Wicked. But next up is Come Close by Sappho. Now I don't know if Sappho in general is really an underhyped author, but this is one of the Penguin Little Black Classics books, and it's basically just a selection of Sappho's poetry, but it does only have 423 ratings on Goodreads, so I figured it would count for this video. And like I said, selection of Sappho's poetry. Sappho was an ancient Greek female poet. We do have more of her than any other female writer. There were other female writers that we have bits and pieces from, lines here and there, and that were mentioned in pieces of ancient history, but nobody like Sappho. But what makes Sappho great isn't that she's a woman, although that's historically significant. Her poetry is just beautiful, and it is poetry that, although was written 2,500 years ago, still translates today into contemporary culture and feelings that you probably experience today. A lot of it's love poetry, some of it's about her family, and it's really beautiful. Sappho's prose are so beautiful, and this lovely little collection is a really nice introduction to her stuff. It's a really nice translation, and I would just highly recommend it. But sticking on the theme of poetry, I want to recommend a modern poetry collection, and I have mentioned this book recently, which I was kind of trying to avoid in the books I was picking for this video, but it only has 6 ratings on Goodreads, and I was like, well, I have to recommend it again then, because this is terrible, seriously. And that's Fighters for Life by Michael Rosen. Michael Rosen's one of my favourite poets. You've heard me mention him quite a few times, especially recently. And this is a collection of predominantly political poetry on various different topics, from small to big, but they really create a very visceral feeling in the reader. They're really consumable as poems, but also very meaningful and strike home. And I just think Michael Rosen is a phenomenal poet and one for everybody to check out. But if you're looking for a proper, you know, novel, then a book I read last year, which I really enjoyed and had less than 1,000 ratings on Goodreads, is Roses by Rose Mannering, who also has a YouTube channel if you want to check it out. I'll link it down below. But this is her retelling of the Beauty and the Beast story, and I really enjoyed this story. What I loved most about it was the background that it gave to the story. It really fleshed out the Beauty and the Beast story and really made Beauty a well-developed character whose whole story you got to learn, because you followed her right from being a baby until the story we know so well, which was a minimal part of it, although it's still an important part of the story. You know, there was a lot that came before it. I think more than half of the book is about Beauty's life before meeting the Beast. And I loved that. I thought it was lovely. I thought Rose created a really wonderful fleshed out world of magic that definitely left me with some questions that I'm hoping will be answered in the sequel, Feathers. But lastly is a book I honestly refuse to believe is actually underhyped, but since my requirements for this video were under 1,000 ratings on Goodreads, I'm gonna quickly mention it here, and it's The Dumb House by John Burnside. It only has 810 ratings on Goodreads, which I'm shocked and appalled by. It was one of my favourite books of last year. It's a really, really weird book, in all fairness, but a really well written and really engaging, if disturbing, read. So I figured if some of you were new subscribers that missed my ravings about The Dumb House last year, this might be a good time to plug it again. You'd think I'd written it. By the way, I'm trying to push it on people. It follows a man who is, simply put, a psychopath. And from a young age, he is obsessed with the soul and speech, and to what extent those two are intertwined, what the original language is, what it means to be human. I mean, it's all a little bit nonsensical, and he's got this sort of inner philosophical debate going on, and he kind of considers himself a bit of an amateur scientist. He considers his research into speech and the soul incredibly important, and he goes to some extreme methods to find out the answers he is looking for. It's definitely quite a violent book, so be warned if that's just not your cup of tea, but I think a lot of you would really enjoy it, so I wanted to recommend it again in another video. But I think that's enough for this one. If you're taking part in the Underhyped Readathon, let me know what you're planning on reading, or if you have a favourite book on Goodreads that has, you know, even maybe less than 100 ratings, then I'd love to know what that is. But until next time guys, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye!